Hi, welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the medicine of Bufo and the way that most people typically experience this medicine, as well as some different ways that you can experience communing with this medicine, and how some of those different ways can help you have a different kind of experience and a deeper relationship with this medicine. So, if you've ever sat with Bufo before, there's a good chance that your experience went something like you arrive, they sit you down, they hold a pipe up, light it, you inhale, and you basically dissolve. And then 10 or 15 minutes, you come back. Um, you may be feeling very blissed out. You may be feeling a bit disoriented, some combination of these. Um, feeling like you just had like a very profound experience is what most people have. Um, and then you may be given, another 10 or 15 minutes to land, come back into your body, and then you're usually sent on your way. And this is one way to experience the medicine, but there is a lot more there for you with this medicine if you're able to take more time and more spaciousness. And that's really what I want to talk about today. So, for anyone that has sat with Bufo before, you know that it's not like other medicines. It's not like ayahuasca, it's not like mushrooms, it's not like wachuma, LSD, any any of these other psychoactive compounds that tend to last longer and tend to be um, more insightful, let's say, right? They really like take you on a journey that you're experiencing. Bufo's a little bit more like being shot out of a rocket ship. And especially when you get served one big dose, it's like you go from zero to a place outside of time and space immediately. And so it's a very big shock for your nervous system to experience this, and it can be very terrifying. And this whole experience, it usually only lasts 10 to 20 minutes. And most people don't really remember what happens within the experience. And part of this is like not remembering. Part of it is there are things that happen within that full release experience that you just can't bring back with you. There's a lot that happens in that space that is not, it cannot be categorized by the mind. Our mind likes to categorize things and assign meaning and create a story around experiences that we've had. And there's a lot that happens in that space that is beyond what the mind is able to process and categorize. And so, because we're working so far beyond the mind, then there is a lot of this process that it's like things are changing, things are shifting, things are happening energetically. But when you come back, it's like you can't really put your finger on what happened in lots of cases. And people who have sat with this medicine understand. It's like after you have this experience, you understand what people mean when they say there's no way to explain what this medicine is. There's no way to understand it intellectually. It truly is an experience to be had. And, that's why people come back and they're like, this is one of the most significant experiences. It's one of the most profound experiences I've ever had. People compare it to like the birth of their first child, right? Um, and it very much can be like going through a portal of death and rebirth. And, the way that we talk about Bufo, we talk about it as a medicine of the energy of divine union. And when, we say divine union, it's really like going back to that source point of creation. And it is a point where everything is possible, right? You're in the mystery, you're way beyond what the mind is capable of understanding. And so there's so much that can be shifted in that space. But it truly is beyond understanding. So there is like, this caveat that makes it can make Bufo really challenging to integrate in a lot of ways. And in some cases, with some people, can actually um, cause people's lives to go really sideways and cause people to have a really hard time after an experience like this if they don't have the proper tools to integrate the experience. And those tools need to be tools that work deeper than the level of the mind, just like the medicine. And of course, this goes for all medicines. All medicines work deeper than the level of the mind, but this one especially, it doesn't give the mind a whole lot to grasp onto. And that's important to take into consideration. And so, most of the time when Bufo is served, it's served in what people would call a dose that causes a full release. And a lot of people that you're going to go sit with, the way that they serve is in one single large dose. There are people like, when I have done, one-on-one Bufo ceremonies, the way that I used to serve, and we just changed everything, the way that we served, and are just, putting a lot more time and space because of some of the things that I'm talking about. But if I'm just doing a Bufo ceremony with someone, I'm always going to bring them in, have time to sit down and talk with them about intentions, and then take them through a guided somatic meditation, sound bath to really get them relaxed and in the body. And then we'll have 2 to 3 doses of medicine, starting with a light dose to really just open up the body, and then increase the dose. And for most people, that second dose is going to be a full release. And so sometimes when you go sit with people, this will be more of the experience that you'll have, where there will be multiple doses of medicine served to begin to open that portal more slowly. And this is definitely, in my opinion, this is a better way to sit with medicine, where there's going to be multiple doses over a period of time to open you more slowly. Because when you sit with this medicine, if you've sat with this medicine, you will probably feel that there's like a certain anxiety that comes up around this medicine. It's like a deep fear. Even if you've never sat with a medicine before, there's a part of you that knows like the kind of surrender and the kind of release that you are being asked to go into with this medicine. And so there's a little bit of resistance and there's a little bit of fear there. And what we can do to, it's not an overcoming of the resistance, it's not an overcoming of the fear, it's really a softening. It is working with our body and saying, hey, let's just do a little bit of this and see how we feel about it. See how it makes us feel. And when we do it that way, when we introduce just a small amount into the body, what it usually does is it actually opens and relaxes the body, makes the body feel, I would say like, it's almost like a heart opening and a relaxation is the best way to describe it. And so it feels really nice. It feels really like nourishing and supportive, these smaller doses of medicine. And then once your body's in that space and it's like, okay, this isn't actually so bad, then when you actually go in and receive the full dose, you can really open and surrender into that. Because, people serve this medicine a lot of different ways, and a lot of people that serve Bufo, they serve really high doses. And so even if your body and your psyche isn't really ready to have that experience, it will force a full release experience. But as anyone who works with the body and works with somatics knows, you cannot force a release of something. You can force an experience, but you cannot force a transformation. And so what happens when we force our bodies, when we force our psyches to have an experience that it's not really prepared to have, what happens afterwards is usually like this severe contraction and feeling like, okay, now I really have to protect myself because my boundaries are being crossed left, right, and center. And that's where, people go home and they have like really difficult experiences integrating because you just like blatantly crossed your own boundaries without any thought of it. And I'm not saying that there's no possibility of having a difficult integration experience if you don't do this, but I do see that a lot with people, where, things can get very challenging after a Bufo experience, especially because so many people that sit with this medicine, it's appealing to them because it's fast and it's quick and it's intense. And this is fine. There's nothing wrong with this. It's just like understanding where you are, but also understanding that deep transformation takes time, and it takes slowness and it takes gentleness. The transformation that most people are actually seeking, you can't force it. And it actually does more harm than good. And so recognizing that, we want to be able to notice what our body is asking for. And I'm not saying that, this one big dose of Bufo is a wrong way to serve the medicine. I've served the medicine like that. It was how I was taught. But in my experience, it's actually not the most transformational way. And it's certainly not the way that is going to give you a transformation in like a kind of gentle, smooth way, rather than something that is a little more bumpy and challenging. And, it's my choice to want to do things in a way that doesn't need to be so challenging, where we can just kind of let things flow in an easy kind of way. Still moving in the direction that we want to go. So, not saying that there's like a wrong way to serve this medicine, but this is simply a different option. And, for people that are interested in sitting with the medicine, but they are a little concerned about the integration of it and they want a more easeful process, this is definitely the way to go. For people that have sat with the medicine before and recognize that there's more there for them, and that there's maybe a deeper relationship that's being asked for, the slower way is also a really good way to develop that and just learn more about what this medicine has to offer. And so what we've learned over the course of holding ceremony ourselves and working with this medicine in different ways is that working with the medicine in low doses, like I said before, it really opens up the body and prepares it for that full release experience. And there's also a lot of somatic work that can be done with lower doses of medicine that you cannot do with a big dose of medicine because you're expanded so much. And a lot of people leave their bodies with this medicine anyway. And, you don't really want to be working on the body very much when people are not in their bodies. At least it's my preference not to do that. I want people to be present in their bodies if they're being worked on, but there is so much somatic work that can be really beautifully facilitated by this medicine at lower doses. And so this is, something that I really want people to be aware of if this is a medicine that they work with, that there's so much potential for really being able to go in and feel what's happening in your body. And of course, this goes back to intention, right? What's your intention going into the medicine? And if your intention is to anchor your awareness in the body and become aware of where you're holding things that are not really aligned with how you want to be living, then you will be brought into the body and your body's going to show you where these things are. And then you can actually work with the medicine to help begin to investigate what's there and create room for some of those energies that are shall we say a little bit stuck, right? A little bit stagnant, creating space for them to flow. It's not really about getting rid of them. It's not about extracting them, right? This is not performing an exorcism, but it is about making space for energy to flow. And of course, a lot of this can happen with a big dose of Bufo, where stuff just flows out and you have no idea what it is. And that has a purpose and a function. But a lot more of that can happen if you're willing to do the more subtle work of bringing the awareness in and working with it, in a grounded state, as well as at these lower doses with the medicine. And, at the end of the day, this is really about learning to direct loving awareness into these spaces in your body that are, holding some of these more challenging aspects of your experience. And this is what we're here to learn how to do. We're not just here to be like a passenger in this experience. We're here to be an active participant. And to me, this is really important. It's important in the way that we serve medicine. And, one of the reasons that somatics is such an important part of this, because this is not about coming in and letting the medicine do all of the work. It's actually about how do we begin to live in a way that's more present and more connected to this physicality. How do we learn how to care for this physicality? How do we learn to identify when there's energies that are getting stuck in our bodies, and how to create flow and how to create space for that? Like, this is what we're here to learn how to do. And that's how we learn how to live in right relationship, rather than just coming back and looking for another fix every time we don't feel good. That's not what this is about. That's not what serving medicine is about, at least not for me. And so that's why I think, it's important that we recognize that there's a different way to work with Bufo, that's beyond, that's more than just full send. And working with Bufo in this way, where you have multiple doses throughout a day, right, where you start low and you gradually increase, you get to see and feel the different ways that this medicine can interact with your body, with your being. And that is a really beautiful way to develop more of a relationship with the medicine, because the experience is so short. Sometimes when you just experience full doses of the medicine, it can be like trying to form a relationship with someone who is like coming in, doing what they need to do, and leaving really quickly. It's like there's no room to sit down and have a conversation where you're really present. And I think that aspect is really important too. Like, the relationship with these medicines is always really important. Being able to commune with them truly, and like have a communication with them where you're present for that communication, is really special. Which sitting with medicine in this way also really allows. And so whether you're, sitting with Bufo over one day or over a number of days, I really suggest finding places that allow you to have more of a drawn out experience, right? More space in the experience of this medicine, where you can experience it at different levels and really open yourself up slowly to receive that full expansion. And the other thing that I think is really important to state about this medicine is that, because it doesn't have like the same kind of long journey, right? Like insightful type journey that longer form psychoactive substances have. Integration is super important. Like, if you have a big experience with this medicine and it was short, right? Like 15 minutes, and then you go home, integration can be really challenging. And so having an integration plan in place is very important. And for this medicine especially, I feel like knowing that part of your integration is going to be working deeply with the body is very important. Because like I said earlier, this medicine works beyond the understanding of the mind. And so, if our integration is mostly mental processing of stories of whatever is coming up, that is not it. We have to work with the subconscious. We have to work with the part of the part of us that is the mystery, right? That's like beyond the understanding of the mind. And we access that through the body. It's not something that is out there, actually. It's something that is inside, that we carry within us. And this is very important. So having an integration plan that includes really paying attention to what's going on in the body. So if you go home and you start having a really difficult time integrating your experience, why is it difficult? What's happening within you that feels difficult? And there may be a story that's associated with it, but try to let that go, right? Just like we're in meditation and we're letting go of the storyline and being present, but we're directing our presence into the body. We're directing our presence into what the feeling is behind what's making this seem like a challenging experience. Because anytime we're going through something that seems challenging, we're feeling a certain way that we do not want to feel. And that's the key. That's the root, is the feeling that you don't want to feel, the feeling that you want to make go away. And that's what we have to learn to work with. That's coming up for a reason. When these things come up and they're challenging enough that they're getting our attention and they're causing resistance, then that's something that's asking to be witnessed. It's asking to be loved. It's asking to be integrated back into ourselves. And so I just, this is not really a video that's specifically on integration, but I want to touch on that because I do see that with Bufo a lot, where people can have very difficult integration experiences because of the nature of the medicine, because there's not really any storyline to hold on to that came from the experience itself. So just understanding that we need to learn how to work with the feelings and the sensations in our body when we work with this medicine, I think is very important. And if we don't do that, if we just keep trying to like push ahead in the way that we were going before, it causes more contraction. It causes more layers of what we would call trauma, right? It causes more layers of resistance. More, you can imagine like when there's something inside of you that's trying to get out, that's trying to flow, but there's a feeling, a sensation there that you don't like, that's challenging for you to hold space for. And so you contract around it and you try to keep it in, right? Then if it's given that power, after ceremony, it's like it gets this power to try to like come out again, and you just contract more around it. It's like building muscle, building strength around this thing that is like really in a lot of ways poisoning you because it's not being allowed to flow, right? It's being kept in this stagnant state that's really unpleasant because you're not willing to feel it. You're not willing to allow it, give it space and allow it to flow. So being aware that this can really happen after any medicine ceremony, but especially Bufo. So don't make your problem worse than it was before by resisting what's coming up. Okay, we have to find a way to work with that. And that's why we work with somatics, within our ceremonies, as well as, giving people somatic resources to take home with them after ceremony so that you can begin to start working with this in your own life and you have tools to work with what's coming up instead of staying in that state of resistance, which is really what causes people suffering at the end of the day. So everything that we've talked about here, this really informs the way that that we hold space with Bufo and the way that we design our ceremonies. And, the ceremonies that we hold now, when we sit with Bufo, we give it a full day. And this is just what we feel is the best way to work with this medicine, is to actually give this medicine a full day and to have experiences with it at multiple strengths, multiple doses in different kinds of ways so that you can really start to work with it all the way from a very grounded level to a, very expansive, beyond the body experience. And we do work with Bufo in all of our ceremonies actually, because this medicine is very powerful, and I believe that it carries a frequency that is extremely important for the specific time on this earth that we are in. It is a frequency of coming into union, of coming into that point of peace and unconditional love, that source frequency. And I believe that we are, as a collective consciousness, coming closer to that, really, being informed by that and embodying more of that in this time. And so this medicine is really important to our work. But we are having a Bufo immersion experience at the end of July, and that will be in Arizona because that's where the toads live, in the Sonoran Desert. And these toads are they're really cool creatures. They really only come out from underground during like 3.5 months in the summer during monsoon season, and they come out and they eat and they reproduce and then they go back underground for the rest of the year. And so the only time that we can interact with them is actually during the summer months. And so that's, why Arizona in the middle of summer is because that's when these toads are out. This is when they're actually active. And there's a lot that we can learn from that. There's a lot that we can learn from the cyclical nature of these really quite funny animals. They really have like quite a lot of personality. So if that's something that you're interested in learning more about, I will put the link below the video and you can check that out. And regardless of if or when or how you choose to engage with this medicine, I just want to close by saying that this particular medicine is a really powerful teacher for the time that we're in, and there's not a wrong way to work with it, but there are more grounded ways to work with it. There are ways to work with it that allow you to bring more of that frequency into your physical being and allow that to flow out into the experience of the world that is in your purview. And so, it not only affects you, it affects all of the environment that's around you. And so again, regardless of how you work with this medicine, just consider how you're embodying what you're experiencing in that space, how you're able to bring more of that frequency into your life and allow it to flow out into the world. And if you're interested in hearing more videos about Bufo and other plant and animal medicines and allies, you can subscribe to our channel. And there's also a link in the description to learn more about the Bufo immersion, where you can also book a call if it resonates. Wishing you all a beautiful day.